Live from Washington, D.C., Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Sekulow.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the broadcast. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're in our music room because I had the opportunity to sit down with a great guy, great ministry, Zoro the drummer, famous drummer, famous percussionist, and we had the chance to get to know each other. We did it right here in our music studio, and I thought as we're now in this season that it would be great to hear this encouraging and exciting testimony from Zoro. Let's start kind of in the beginning here.
Okay.
Everybody knows you as a world-famous, world-class drummer, percussionist, incredible musician. But
Thank you.
let's go back to how it started.
Okay.
I mean, you didn't grow up and say, you weren't born and said, I'm a drummer, but almost. I mean, you started playing drums at 4 years old.
Yeah, well, basically I was raised by a single immigrant mother. My mother was from Mexico City, and she raised 7 of us alone. And I started off originally in Compton, California. And that's where I grew up, and my first concert was 7 years old. It was the Supremes and the Temptations when they were hot, and I was immediately attracted to I didn't know I was going to be a drummer then, but I was immediately attracted to that rhythm, and I just honed in on the drummers. And from then I came home and made a makeshift, what I call a ghetto drum set, which was like old oatmeal boxes, almond roca cans,
right?
Folgers coffee cans, and Tupperware.
How old were you then when that started?
Like 7,
yeah.
Like after that concert.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was going to be a drummer, and then I would just play with like spoons, but I played like out on the corner of the street in Compton Boulevard. I had my little transistor radio on, and people were giving me tips.
So you knew this was a gift early on, but I view, and I know you do in your bookstore, you talk about this, that God implants with everybody a gift. But here you are, 7 years old, you go see the Supremes, listening to the music. But I want to start back then in Compton, California, with 7 siblings.
Yeah, well, I think the greatest thing that happened to me was I had an incredible mother who just had this indomitable spirit. She had a very dreamer-like spirit. She had a lot of faith, and she would use songs a lot to encourage me. She loved Frank Sinatra. And
who doesn't?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I went to see him when I was 12, and that changed my life. But she always told me that I could do anything, and we would originally go to the Catholic Church, and she just always taught me to believe against all odds. And her father was a Supreme Court judge in Mexico City.
Wow.
So she grew up in the lap of luxury as a young, up to 18, and then her father died. So she never carried herself as somebody who didn't think of possibilities. And she was educated, and she, went to all the great operas. So when I was young, we didn't have anything. I mean, there was one point we lived in our car. We lived in a 1962 Chevy Nova and in a 13-foot trailer and in a tent when we moved to Oregon. But she always had this vision and faith and just would impart that to me. She loved music and constantly played music around the house. So I just always felt like I was a dreamer, maybe because I was like her. I just believed in incredible, phantasmical things that I think could happen. I had no reason to believe it looking at the circumstances, but I kind of could see. You mentioned a cardboard box. When I was in 5th grade, I entered the school talent show, and I wanted to be in it really bad. And I told the guys that had a band, I said, I'm a drummer. They said, okay, great, you could be our drummer. And then every time we would have a rehearsal, they would say, well, where's your drums? I'd say, oh, they're in the shop right now getting fixed, but I'll just play right now on these chairs just to keep it warm. Then on the day of the show, they were like, where's the drums? I'm like, well, the shop closed early, and they didn't come out, but my brothers brought this big box. So I had a big, huge Maytag refrigerator box.
I remember those. Those were pretty heavy duty.
Huge box, but I played on the box, and then my brothers and sisters painted like a drum set on it for me. And that's how I started. But they saw like 20 people in the crowd, but in my head, I saw 50,000 people. I saw the future, and I was excited.
It reminds me of something. The first time I did TV, I was on, it was on TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network, years and years ago. It was Paul Crouch. It was 1986. And he told me, he said, look, when you look in a camera, don't just see like one person. See the entire world you're speaking to. And, I mean, here I am, 30 years after that, over 30 years after that, I still see the same way.
Yeah.
So I think that part of that casting of a vision and understanding the potential of reach, because you talk a lot in the book in SOAR about potential.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. You believe everybody's been planted within themselves a gift from God?
Without a question. Every single person watching, hearing on this planet has a divine gift that they did not give themselves. We don't take pills and all of a sudden have skills. You know what I mean? We're born with them. I didn't give myself drumming talent. I only unearthed it and recognized it. So everybody out there watching has a talent. Now the question is whether we ever discover it, and if we discover it, whether we ever do anything about it.
I encourage you to visit Zoro's website. That address is up on the screen, and support his great work and great ministry as he goes around the world proclaiming the good news of Jesus. Also, don't forget the ACLJ, we're in a matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate to the ACLJ, we get a matching gift for. So we encourage that as well at aclj.org. As we go into a break, a little bit of the jam session that we had with our band and Zoro.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
What are you telling, 20-somethings right now about developing the talents they have?
That's why we're here. The whole reason why we're on this planet. The only thing that gives life any purpose or significance or joy is the pursuit of a goal. It's like any movie. There's no good movie without the pursuit of a goal of the protagonist, right? So there's no life that's worthy unless the protagonist has a goal and obstacles he has to overcome that make the dream fulfilling. If we were able to, at 5 years old, just have everything that we ever wanted, then there's no purpose in life. So if you want to have, you can be rich and famous and still not be living out a purpose. Mm-hmm. Purpose is bigger. It's walking in your calling, and also ultimately understanding that the whole point of it is so that we can impact other people. And this is where a lot of people miss it, is they might become a famous actor or a famous athlete but if the journey was all about them, it ceases to fulfill you. Because I believe the way God created us is that we only find satisfaction when we're serving. And so so it's important that you are accountable to develop what God gave you, but to ultimately understand that it's passing through you. I don't own any of my gifts or talents.
Right.
They're just here so that I can bless as many people as possible on the journey. I want as many people to be affected by my life in a positive way through the drumming, through the speaking, and through the writing. So that's what I teach the millennials and anybody who's living, that this is what we're here to do. And when it's all said and done, I think God's going to ask us all to give an account of our life. What did you do with the treasure that I gave you?
Right.
And you better have multiplied it, and it better come back to be more than what you got.
So let me take you back. You're 7 years old. You've spent time in Compton, California. You end up in Oregon.
Yep.
How did that happen, by the way?
Well, so I grew up in Compton, California, and then in 1971, the earthquake came, known as the Sylmar earthquake.
Right.
And my mother was kind of anxious. She was a very adventurous woman, and she was anxious to try something new. My oldest brother, Armando, married a girl who was from Grants Pass, Oregon. They went on a little trip there. My mother never went. She went there sight unseen. My older brother and sister went there, and they said, we should maybe come up here. And we had never seen rivers, mountains, lakes. I mean, we grew up in the LA River,
right.
Where there's sliding down dirt clods on cardboard.
Right.
So we moved up there sight unseen in 1971.
What was that like for you? I mean, you're a city kid in Compton, LA, and you're in the fields of Oregon.
It was a drastic life change. It was very hard at first. I was 9 years old. Going on 10.
Was it hard?
It was very difficult because culturally, that little small town, my mother was Mexican, so we experienced, for the first time in our lives, we experienced racism because in California it was very diverse, so there are people from all countries.
Right.
But in that place at that time, there weren't a lot. Now, we met a lot of nice people, but we also met a lot of people that would call us, beaners and wetbacks and just mean. But we started off, my mother had a vision, and she wanted to not be a renter anymore, and we lived on a little piece of land with a little small down payment, and we lived in our car, and we lived in a 13-foot trailer. And then eventually we got an army tent so we could have enough room to change our clothes in. And that's how we started. So it was like the grapes of wrath.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was adventurous because I was in this new land that was different, and I actually began raising chickens. I thought I was going to be the world's greatest chicken farmer. And then
Probably hadn't seen a chicken before then. We're not
except at the grocery store.
Right.
So it was like going from the Sanford and Sunset to Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
But it was those experiences.
So was it a tough adjustment?
Yeah, I would say it was a tough adjustment.
What's happening? So at 7, you're playing on a box. What's happening at 9 and 10?
So the turning point was really like 15, almost 16.
All right.
So I was playing on the box at the 5th grade, and then no drums for a long time. Couldn't afford any drums. At 16, I took a job at my own high school as a janitor. That was the only job available. I asked the counselor, I said, can you put me around music? He comes back a week later and says, the only job I could find you is a janitor at the school, and you could clean the band room. Okay, that was the end of the job. It was a half an hour, it was a 2-hour job. That last half hour was to vacuum the band room, put the instruments away, put the music away. So I always reserved the last 10 minutes to sneak on the drum set. Okay. And the band director was always gone. And I didn't own a drum set at the time, but I would sneak on there and play. Well, one day, he caught me playing on the drums instead of cleaning, and then he said, wait right there, kid. And then he goes and gets somebody, and I thought I'm getting fired.
You thought you were in trouble.
I thought I'm getting fired because I'm drumming on the job, not sleeping on the. And he comes back with another guy and says, play again. And then he says, you're a rhythmic genius. Where have you been hiding out? Now, he didn't know I've been trying to get in the school band program from the 4th grade. Every year I said, could I be a drummer? And they'd say, there's too many drummers, you can't play the drums. So year after year I was turned down. But because of my janitor job, I got discovered. And then he said, I want you in all the school ensembles next year. Instantaneously, the drums gave me an identity. Because all the way up until that point, until the 11th grade, all the way up to that, I was kind of invisible. I didn't do any school activities. We didn't have money. We didn't have any resources. So I was not popular in any way. So I was really kind of almost like invisible. The drums all of a sudden, and then the very first school concert, I mean, from the word go, I could play. I mean, it was just in me. And of course, I began to take lessons, and I studied, and I immersed myself in the study of the craft, but I instantly had rhythm. So, I mean, the band director lets me do a drum solo at the first state band competition. This is a true story.
Do you remember the songs you were playing? I can still remember like the first band when I did. I lived in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, but they still had a Christmas pageant, and I had to play a little drummer boy on the drums. I was actually the trumpet player, but the snare drummer, he moved. So they moved me from the trumpet. I mean, like a week's notice to play. I still get freaked out when I have to hear a little drummer boy.
We got two things in common because they pawned me off on the trumpet for one semester, and I said I can't do that. Yeah. But anyway, so they let me do a drum solo, and I played a Maynard Ferguson tune called Pagliacci, the opera song. Well, he did a kind of a funky disco version of it. So they gave me a drum solo, but because I was the janitor, I let myself in the band room after school, and I stayed up all night, 12 hours straight, and practiced for my solo the next day. And when the kids came in the band room, they saw me sleeping in my sleeping bag next to the drums. They said, what are you doing here? I said, I've been practicing all night. So I did the solo, and the state band competition said, you're the best drummer we've ever heard. And they thought the band director was a drummer.
So where are you living at this point?
Grants Pass, Oregon.
So you're back in Oregon. Okay.
Yeah,
you're in Oregon now.
So I really like diligently plugged in there, but I loved a lot of the music, like, of the 70s. I loved like Elvis and loved the Beatles, and but I was a soul R&B guy from growing up in Compton. Yeah. So I loved all of the Motown, and I used to dream of meeting all these guys, and I wrote a diary a lot. So I always wrote in my diary, one day I'm going to do this, and one day I'm going to meet these people. So I was that kid who was always dreaming, but working really, really hard.
So you're 15, 16 years old. You now drums become a passion.
Yeah.
What about faith commitment at that point?
Well, I'd already found the Lord when I was a young boy. Yep. Probably before anybody could tell me, I already felt there was a God. And then my mother reaffirmed that. But I felt there was a God when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And then when I'm about 11 is when the pastor of the Baptist church came over and took me to like a church camp for the week, and he bought me the shoes. I didn't even have shoes to go. So it was like one of those moments I'll never forget. He took me to the camp, and at that camp is when I like really kind of walked up the aisle and sort of received Christ as my Savior. That was a turning point. And at 16, 17, I wanted to be a drummer and I wanted to be a preacher. And a
Did
writer.
you ever think you'd be the drummer, preacher, writer?
I always wanted all of them. I didn't know how they would unfold. I'll give you an example. When I graduated high school in Eugene, Oregon. So for my senior year, we moved to Eugene, and that's a whole nother epic year. But then after that, I joined a local band in Eugene that was professional. They came down to Disneyland to audition for a house spot, and we didn't get the gig, and the thing fell apart. But I wound up back in L.A. So I didn't know what to do. So I went to Beverly Hills High School, and I sat on the lawn and pretended like I was a new student. And I had a boombox, a ghetto blaster. I had my drum pad. I was cranking some Earth, Wind & Fire.
Love Earth, Wind & Fire.
I had my pimped out hat. And within 5 minutes, different musicians started coming up and talking to me. I went to school every day at Beverly Hills High as if I were a student. Except
you weren't.
Except I wasn't. I was reliving my senior year without having to do any homework because I was like, I didn't know what else to do. But, I'm in LA, I need to meet people my own age. And so I sat on the lawn. But, in 5 minutes, I met a guy named Lenny Kravitz who became one of my best friends.
So how'd you meet Lenny?
Right there on the lawn. He came up and started talking to me because he said, oh, man, I could see you play on those skins. You play drum set? I said, yeah. He goes, man, I'm a guitar player. Let's get together and jam. And so we immediately became friends at that moment. Half an hour later, I met another kid named Kenny. We became friends. He played the bass. A month later, he takes me up to his house. I didn't know who he was. We get to his house. I'm going, oh, my gosh, these people. I've never seen a house like this. It's a mansion in Bel Air. They got llamas, and it turns out to be one of my iconic idols that I idolized as a kid, Berry Gordy.
Wow.
The founder of Motown. The Berry Gordy.
Yeah.
He was Kenny Gordy, Berry's son.
Wow.
So the next thing you know, I'm up at the Berry Gordy mansion every day. I bought every one of those 45s as a kid, the Jackson 5. I had all of the, and so a month later, the doorbell rings. I see 2 Rolls Royces pull up. Nobody answers. I answer the door. It's Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, like my favorite group as a kid. So I had a lot of these serendipitous Forrest Gump moments, but I planted myself and did audacious things by faith because that's what faith is.
Well, as you already seen, Zoro is a tremendous talent. He's got a tremendous testimony in a ministry that's impacting the world. I was greatly encouraged by spending some time with him. We got to know each other, and this is a great guy. He's got a heart for the Lord. He's also a very talented musician. You saw a little bit of that as we've come in and out of the breaks, but let me give you a little bit of a drum solo that Zoro did right here in our music studio.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
Everybody should get the book. Again, it's available on Amazon, wherever you buy your books, but of course you get it right on Amazon. It's called Soar. It's by Zoro. It's great. I've read it a couple of times. What would you say the three big takeaways? I do three because when you're arguing a case of the Supreme Court, you have 3 points you can make. It's 1, 2, and 3. No matter what you ask, they're getting one of the three.
I would say out of the 9, the 3 that I would say that people need to walk away with, principle number 5 is called pursue.
Right.
Most people have a dream. Most people have something they envision that they'd like to do.
Yep.
But they're not doing the pursuit part. The pursuit part is like what Thomas Edison said. He said, opportunity comes to most people, but it's dressed up like overalls, and it's missed by most people because it looks a lot like work. So it's pursuit is it. It's pursuing the vision, the goal.
Yep.
So, and then the 7th one is bend.
Right.
Because when you're in the pursuit of something you really dream of doing, then disappointment comes. That's what either takes people out of the game or you stay in the game. Right. So learning to bend. And then number 8 is just B-E. Learning to be the person that God created you to be, embracing all the uniqueness that's J, all the uniqueness is Zoro, because we get influenced by everything we've ever seen, heard, read, learned, done. But then ultimately, God's created an expression with you that's unlike any other creature on the planet. And the more we embrace the uniqueness of who we are, the more we soar, because God didn't intend for us to soar in somebody else's skin or with somebody else's wings. He intended for me to play drums a little bit different than anybody else on the planet. And I have a different combination of anybody else. I have a single immigrant mother. I have different experiences, different DNA, and different personality, different everything that comes out just me. And when I embrace that uniqueness of me, and when people out there embrace who they are, that's where you really soar, because we're not meant to be anybody else. Look, 1 million people practice law, but nobody practices it like you. Right? 1 million people play drums, but nobody plays exactly like me.
Right.
So the more we embrace who God made us and stop running from it, because a lot of people are trying to be a carbon copy of something else or somebody else. Right. And when you lose your identity, you lose the uniqueness that God, every flower is different. So I think that's a key thing. And if I were to squeeze in, if the Supreme Court let me squeeze in a 4th one, the 4th one is the reason why we're here.
Okay.
The 4th one, the last principle of the book is impact. When we understand that the reason we're here, you and I are here, we're taking up the space at this moment, but one day you and I will be gone. Right. So the only thing that's going to matter is not how successful Jay was, not how successful Zoro was, but how many people's life got better because we lived and we occupied this place. How many people did we touch through our ministry, through our, but not just that we touched through our broadcasts and through our music, but who had encounters with us. Because anybody who's famous could say, well, I'm doing great work, they're seeing my movies. But if you're an idiot when people meet you, or you're arrogant, and some kid who's an aspiring actor or drummer, like I meet people at the airport all the time, like drummers that recognize me.
Right.
I always bring extra sticks with me, autograph cards, a book to give away. I want to make that encounter when they meet me, whether it's 30 seconds or 5 minutes, I want to make it memorable. Man, I met Zoro. He gave me his sticks. He took a picture with me. He said, you're going to be great one day. He signed his book and wrote something beautiful. I want to make that minute count. Because at the end of my life, I'm not going to get any treasure because I was a great drummer or a great writer or a great speaker, because God's going to go, those were free.
Right.
I gave you those things. Right. But what did you do with it? Who was blessed by you personally, not just because you had a big ministry or because you were a big actor, but one-on-one, whose life changed. So that's the real takeaway.
There's no question to me, you have great hope. You have great hope for not only what you're doing, but for the people that are being impacted, but for mankind. You have this optimism of hope.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, and that it comes because God is an optimistic God. He's already written the story. It turns out good if you read the end of the book. And despite all the things that we go through as human beings, as a race, without hope, we are hopeless. So we must maintain that spirit of optimism. Most things in life are really just an attitude adjustment. Situations don't change. Our attitudes towards them change, and that enables us to overcome things. But I am the eternal optimist, and I'm hopeful because God gave man a purpose. He helped us to overcome these obstacles so we can live a purposeful, joyous life despite that we're in the middle of a war through our lives.
Thanks for being. It's been great being with you.
It's been an honor and a privilege,
Absolutely
Jay.
great.
Thank you for this is a turning point for me.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for coming. The book is called Soar. You were meant to live for so much more. Well, that's going to do it for the broadcast today. Again, let me encourage you to support the great work that Zoro and his ministry team, they do and engage around the globe. But if you go to the website, it's right there on the screen. Go to his website. You can get a lot of information, but you can also support his great work. I encourage you to do that. Again, Zoro, great guy. We had a tremendous time together. He also played with our band. Again, also, let me not forget that we're in a matching challenge campaign, so your support of the ACLJ makes a huge difference. ACLJ.org for that. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. This was a bit of a different broadcast, but I wanted to let you have the testimony. Because we're in that season, I would say, as we're approaching the Christmas season, going into the holidays, it's important to understand the focus should always be about the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and we did a little bit of that today on this broadcast. Let's go out in music.
All right, Zoro, take a little bit. Take another round, man. Here you go.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.